So we're live. We have people logged in, so it's great to have you on board.
I'll just take it from here.
Well, yeah,
Absolutely.
just first of all, if I can ask, how have you been during the pandemic? How has it affected you? It's always good to learn from the experts how they've been impacted, because obviously you're not untouchable. You're like everybody else.
Yes, well, it's an interesting. It could take quite a while to answer it properly, I suppose, Connor. But I've been very busy because of the area of the work I work in. Companies realise the value and the importance of working through such things that we're going to look at now. Keeping people focused, keeping people motivated, the incredible challenges and crises, I suppose, that people have come to in remote working. Some have taken to like duck to waters, others have struggled very much. So my area of learning, I suppose, has really been, I suppose, at the heart of what people are struggling with. And so I've been very, very busy. Which I'm very glad personally that is the case. And I suppose it kept me and I suppose my family kind of focused as well through all of this. The first lockdown, and now here we are again in a, a kind of adjusted second lockdown. I suppose I've been trying to live what I preach as well, because it's all about maintaining positivity and focus and motivation, and what that really means, without being too blue sky about it all, what that really means in a pandemic or in a crisis like this. So, okay, is the short answer.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to hearing about some of your habits, so I can improve the quality of my life and setting sort of long-term and short-term goals. So I look forward to listening to what you have to say.
Great. Well, thanks a million, and I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to see that there's people here who are coming along with their open minds and ready to learn something. We have about 3/4 of an hour here, guys, and I hope something interesting and engaging for you. I'm here today on behalf of the Learning Rooms and the Health Management Institute Ireland. We are, I suppose, specialists in this type of learning, this kind of, we do both e-learning and live sessions on site usually, but now we have gone to remote for the moment. And we are, I suppose, very, very focused on professional development in in everything that I suppose comes to I suppose touch on managing other people, being managed as well, and I suppose developing in our workplaces, but also as human beings, and letting both kind of benefit the other in that way. And I've been working on their behalf in both qualified and non-qualified programs for nearly 6 years now. So it's always a pleasure. And it's great to be here, and it's great to be representing the Learning Rooms here today. We are in Sandyford along with all of you. And, everybody has come through, a very, very radical change in how we work. So today's talk will be taking definitely that context and keeping it in mind, because it's so relevant, and it still is. And the thing is, we don't know where it's all going to go, and that uncertainty is impacting on all of us. So I'll be taking that very much as our context, but what we're going to look at today really is relevant to any time. I suppose it's about focusing and identifying what these transformations are, or whether we are part of it as an evolving kind of transformation, or are we driving it, in fact? And it's something we have specifically addressed and want to do and want to make that change. So we'll be looking at it from both points of view. But I suppose there's only really a couple of things we can get through, I suppose, in any meaningful way in this short time. Normally this type of training I would do, it would at least one day or maybe even more than that. But we're going to just go and look at, first of all, at getting we're not going to do an introduction because I think it's been done well already, and I suppose I'd be kind of more concerned in getting into the real learning of the session today. So we're going to look first of all at these fears of transformation, and even just to acknowledge and to accept that all transformation does bring about, I suppose, these fears, and knowing what they are and knowing that they are normal can be our first step in moving beyond, I suppose, those little dipping the toe in that we might do and then get scared and pull back and not actually end up making the changes we want. So very important part of transformation of any kind is confronting the fears that come with it and the natural protectiveness that we have of ourselves in fearful situations. And then we're going to go and look at how we manage to get away from that, I suppose, basically. The little baby steps, even though we might have this lovely big goal for ourselves, and that's wonderful, we do have to go slowly. We do have to take those small steps first before we can get to the big leaps and all of that. So going from a place of reaction, that kind of instinctive protectiveness I might feel about myself, whether I've made this decision to transform myself or it has been made on my behalf and I have to go along with it. What is my reaction? And then how can I get from there into something where I'm in a powerful seat, in a powerful place of proactivity, if you like. And then we're going to look at a very well-known, but well-worn and well-used and much successful kind of model called the GROW model. Some of you might have heard of it, some of you might have used it. And for that, guys, I'd like you to kind of keep it in mind. I'm going to be asking you to have a goal or some kind of dream even that you might have to use while I'm talking you through the steps of that model. So we can even, in the short time that we have, pin it down to something that might be even meaningful enough for you to go and at least make the first, take the first step towards it. But I suppose what we're going to start off with really is this idea of fear of transformation. And we are hardwired, and it is for very good reason we are hardwired to be a little fearful of change, to create a sort of a comfort zone, if you like, around ourselves, a sort of status quo, kind of paradigm, or our own personal understanding of the world that we're in, and to make that as stable and comfortable and nice as possible. That's a very normal and very, very good thing to do for ourselves. And what happens normally in life, things can just come in and happen that take us out of there. And really, we are hardwired in our brains is that whatever it is we have to do, okay, so we'll go and do it, we'll go and look after it, whatever that requirement of us is that makes us leave that comfortable place. But we have one thing in mind, guys, and that is to get back in as soon as possible, to recover and to make that place even more comfortable if we can. And even less prone to I suppose, situations that require us to leave again. And that, you know, as you can see, is a very normal, very human thing. It helps us, it keeps us safe. However, it is the very thing that works against us in times where change is happening. And like I said, whether it's a change we've decided to make or a change that we want to make, or we've been required to make. But there's one thing we can always rely on, guys, is that change will always be happening. If one area of your life is stable and certainty is definitely, you know, at a level that you need it to be, you can be guaranteed that another little part here is preparing itself to spring itself on you and make it kind of, you know, that sense of unstable again. So what is this, you know, why, when it is a consistent thing, when it is the kind of very, very sure value we can be sure of, why is it so difficult for us? So I suppose what we're feeling at the moment is very useful. This kind of collective uncertainty that the whole world is feeling because of the pandemic can actually be very useful for informing how this fear works in times of change or in times of transformation, or when we're heading towards one, even if we want to make that change. And so we can learn a lot from the context that we're living in now, and how we have managed to cope with that it can be really helpful to really pin down what this fear is. And so this quote here is, in this moment of immense uncertainty and collective vulnerability, we must acknowledge our fears, but then we must consciously step up and be braver than we want to be. The situation is requiring us to be brave. So we have to make that step out of the comfort zone. It is required. So what does that require us to do? It requires us to focus on our strengths and to just try and not listen to that voice of fear coming in, because we have no choice in a crisis. So that's a great way of kind of finding our way to the kind of fear that is I suppose, potentially stopping us from transforming in the first place. So I tend to call this sneaky fear. It's not the big bang that comes with the beginning, like that big announcement of, you know, back in March, we had to go home and shut down the schools and everything. That's the big bang. But that sneaky fear is what we've been left with afterwards. And it is that kind of fear that is very detrimental to our ability to transform. So it's that sense of anxiety, that sense of uneasiness. I'm not in my comfortable place. I want to get back there as soon as I can. We feel awkward out there in this other place. We feel heavy-handed about things that would come easy and we could do quite smoothly normally. So we're in this very awkward place. But is it necessarily enough to send us back into the comfort zone and never even try to go any further with what we're trying to achieve or the transformation we want to make in our lives? So this is what I suppose I kind of, these zones, I suppose, is a helpful visualization for ourselves in this time of transformation, or when we want to achieve some kind of transformation. So here we are in that lovely comfort zone, that place we are at all costs trying to always get back to. And then right out here in the red circle is what we call the panic zone. But guys, there is somewhere in between. And as much as we can, it does kind of lend itself, if we become as comfortable as possible out there, we can see it as a learning zone. Out here is where I stretch myself. Out here is where I do have to step up a little bit more. Out here can be very, very exciting as well. And I'm learning new things and meeting new people and coming to different conclusions about the very comfort zone I've just left even. So I like to think of it as a kind of a buffer to the panic zone. And there is this step in between. Just because I've left my comfort zone doesn't mean I'm out in this really, really difficult place. I can be doing actually really, really well in this learning zone. And again, to use the example of the pandemic, we are all out here all the time at the moment. This is where we have had to stretch ourselves. And the comfort zone might be kind of beckoning us back in. But as the time goes on, we've probably discovered strengths and things about ourselves that we didn't realize. Actually, we're okay out here. And it doesn't necessarily mean we need to go out to the panic zone. Now we can, but we can get back in quickly into the learning zone just by taking a bit of I suppose, some action on what that fear and the impacts of that fear is doing to us. So creating these, I suppose, a goal is one way of being out in that learning zone and doing something that can help us and benefit us and keep us there in that kind of comfortable place without having to dip too much into the panic zone. And one way, one person is a man called Stephen Covey. He's very well known in the area of coaching or career development. He helps us really put a kind of a visual on that so that we can get from that very reactive focus of fear and panic and go to a place of proactivity so we can actually be addressing things and kind of little by little making things happen. So what he talks about here is the circle of influence and the circle of concern. Now, as you can see on the slide, there's two. So I'm over here in the reactive focus for the moment, guys. And in here, you can see that this very large dark blue circle kind of, you know, impinging on this kind of light blue circle in the middle. Basically, what's out here in the dark blue is everything that might belong out in that panic zone. Things that we are concerned and fearful of, but that we can do absolutely nothing about. And unfortunately, our brains do work against us here, because when we're in the reactive zone, our brains are hardwired, in fact, to go the path of least resistance. And as we all know, when things are tough, it's easier to say, oh, well, there's nothing I can do about this, and to take a little break and put our feet up and kind of spend a bit of time in denial and do nothing about it. Things like the actual virus itself, things like the chances of it going into a further lockdown, things that in our own capacity we are actually incapable of changing. And what happens is when we spend too much time in that place of concern, lying awake at night, worrying about it, impacting on our own health, it impinges on our ability in here, in that light blue circle, where we actually do have influence. So in this time of this pandemic, looking at the things that we have influence over can seem like they're very insignificant in the face of what's out there in this dark blue circle. And so it has the effect of shrinking our sense of our own power, and making those small things that we can change seem very, very insignificant. But the trick is, guys, is to start. Because once we do start taking care of those little things that are in there, for example, eating well, sleeping well, all of those things, now we've heard the messages over and over, I won't repeat them again, but all of those things we can do, taking care of the fact that I'm working from home, making that as good as can be, all of those kind of starty off tasks you probably have all done a few months ago, has led you then into a place of a higher level of influence over your life, which brings you over to this circle of influence where the arrows are actually, reaching out. And while those issues that belong out there in the circle of concern in that dark blue place still exist, are still there, we're too busy in here in the circle of influence becoming more and more powerful as we do those so-called insignificant tasks. We get more confident, and so those tasks in fact become of a higher level of importance in our lives, and we start to take steps to tackle the bigger issues that we can actually make changes in or transform at this time. And so our focus is proactive. We are so proactively involved in getting things done in here that those things, as they may stay as long as they like, but they are not impacting on us in the same way. And we're busy achieving, getting stronger, and being influential in our own lives. So I would recommend anybody who's interested in Stephen Covey's circle of concern, circle of influence. There's oodles of stuff online you can get to go a little deeper with that. So why change anything? Of course, that's another, I suppose, question that we ask ourselves in the beginning of a transformation. We're dealing with the idea of fear. We're dealing with the kind of things that are telling us, oh, why do that? It's just going to be so uncomfortable. And of course, the last time it went very badly, etc. We can, why change anything? We often say this in times of change, why fix it if it's not broken, and these kinds of things we can say. But one time I think that we all have an experience of coming into a situation where we simply must change. And I think Viktor Frankl, the man who wrote so powerfully about surviving huge adversity in his life, he was captured and taken into a concentration camp during World War II. He simply wrote, or he simply puts it, that when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And I think that really harks back to the circle of influence, where we can do nothing about these things out here, much as they are worrying us and real. But however, when we are inside doing something from the inside out, then we start to become powerful, and then we start to see things in a very, very different way. So I do kind of often think of Viktor Frankl in that way. And so it helps me kind of go beyond that, why bother? What's the point? Kind of, this is insignificant in the face of what I'm actually, facing into. To go a little further with that then, a great tool, and I use this in coaching with people all the time, is to actually look at benefits and look at consequences. Weighing up the benefits of making this change or this transformation that you'd like to make, as big and huge and unfeasible as it may even appear to you when you have the idea at first, weighing that up against the consequences of not doing it. And just remembering those words of Viktor Frankl is that if I can't change the situation, well, then maybe it's up to me to make the change. What are the benefits for me? What are the benefits for the people around me, or the people in my life, the people in my workplace, whatever this change might have an impact on? And list those benefits. Even if they are infeasible at the moment, just making that list can make us see really where those benefits are. And over here on the other side of your list, you're going to make a list of the consequences of if I never make any change at all here, if I never even attempt to make that change. What are the consequences on me and my ability to be powerful in my own life, to have influence over what happens to me? And then even in a practical application, what are the consequences in my workplace? What are the consequences for my team? What are the consequences for my family? Whatever the case may be, if I don't try to make this change. So we're going to stay here. We don't like the fact that we disagree or that we row a lot on around this particular area. Are we going to stay doing that? Are we going to kind of continue in that never-ending circle? Or are we going to move on and into this brighter, possibly slightly unfeasible looking place right now, but at least to have our eye on it, because the benefits are so big, and we can convince ourselves when the change we're trying to make the going gets a bit tough, we can go back to that list of benefits and that list of consequences to kind of spur us on a little bit further as we are going through the process of it. So the whole idea, I suppose, definitely in the world of coaching, definitely in the world of the workplace, but also in our lives, guys, the idea of setting goals is really important. It helps us focus, it keeps us motivated. And we, I suppose, can distinguish between the extrinsic and the intrinsic goals that we might have. The extrinsic goals are very important. They can be going for a promotion, a goal to go on a trip, that would be wonderful these days, a goal to put an extension on my house, a goal to get a job in a different area, to change my career, etc. But they can also be intrinsic goals that can be the kind of motivators that drive us towards more self-actualization. So they could be a goal to increase my confidence, a goal to do better in my communication, a goal to manage my emotions better in particular situations, especially as they're coming down the line at the moment. So we can have these external, I suppose, short term in many ways. The goal of getting a promotion is a wonderful thing. It motivates me, but in the time frame, it's usually short, whereas the intrinsic are more long term. But one kind of rule of thumb or guide I try to say to people I'm working with is that the goal we have should be in some way linked to a dream. And I know that sounds a little blue skies and a little bit kind of impractical maybe in the times we're living in, but if we can at least hook it onto a dream that we might have, a bigger dream, a kind of a blue skies, you know, if the world were to change tomorrow type dream. And if our goal could actually make sense in that kind of dream reality, well then I think we have a better chance of reaching it and making a success of it. So setting a goal is a really good way to see your own action, your plans and stuff come to life. You have a guide, you have the end in mind, if you like, you have a direction. We can only be successful, I think, when these goals are connected in some way to some kind of dream that we might have, some kind of utopian vision we have for ourselves, for our lives, for the people in it. And then achieving a personal goal makes us strong. And again, I can't emphasize enough that circle of influence increases its presence in our lives because we are achieving these small short-term or long-term goals in that very proactive way. And that is exactly what builds us, builds our core, so that when things do go wrong, we can refer to those successes in the past and I suppose be nourished by them to go on and keep going. So just a little kind of exercise. I'm not going to ask you obviously to feed back on this, guys, but just to look at these personal traits that I have selected over time working with people in achieving goals, these kind of aspects of ourselves that we bring to the fore. I'd like you to do two things for me. If you have a pen and paper, all the better. If not, there's not that much to remember. But I'd like you to look at this list and select 3 that you believe come easy to you, that are kind of something that you don't have to put in a huge effort, you don't have to dig too deep to find at the moment. Do that first maybe. I'll just give you a few moments to think and look at this list here. What comes easy to you out of that list? Now maybe there's much more than 3 come easy to you, but what would be the 3 most that come most easy to you? Okay, and when you have those 3 there, think about how they serve you, how they have served you recently in dealing, let's say, with all of the required changes you've been having to make, how your life has transformed in the last 6 months, say, of this pandemic. or maybe how they have always served you in life, that you stand by them, that they're almost like your values in some ways. Again, you can go back to this when you have a little bit more time to really reflect on that. But now I'd like you to do something else for me, guys. I'd like you to take 3 that may not be ones that come easy to you. They may be ones that you don't use very often, but could have something to help you in achieving a goal that you might have at the moment. So 3 that you would like to have with you as you achieve, or as you take the first step towards a transformative goal that you might have. And what 3 are they? Are they very different? Would you like maybe 3 that you'd never dream of even using before? 3 things you'd like to have. And what I say to people when we're in this kind of, I suppose, a session where we're trying to achieve or look at the path towards achieving a goal, when you have those 3 and you're sure of them, I say to people to put them places that you will see them several times a day, not just once a day, several times a day. And at the moment, guys, the way my life is at the moment, I tend to set about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 alarms per day sometimes, with all of the different things going on. And so the label I give my alarm, the name I give my alarm at the moment is with 3 of these things in there, so that every time my alarm goes off, it reminds me to be, you know, adaptable, to be to remember the purpose of all of this, and to be let's say inspirational to the people I come in contact with. 3 things. Put them on your fridge, put them in the loo, all of those things, guys. I think they really do work. We need to be reminded of these things. It's not just enough to pick them out and say, yeah, it'd be great to be a little bit this, a little bit more that. The more reminders we tell ourselves to be that way, the more the higher the chances we have of actually being that way. So for the next part of the session, guys, and I know it's a very short session, I would actually like anybody out there to put aside maybe those short-term goals that you have, maybe that you're halfway through, and maybe this is all helpful with. But I'd like all of us to, just for the purpose of the next part, to actually think of a goal that might be linked to one of those kinds of dreams I'm talking about, that kind of a life dream. And I'm not talking about winning the lottery and going off forevermore on a cruise or whatever, but something that you might have, you know, feasibly could one day start looking at putting in as a goal. So not the very practical things as such for the next part of the exercise, but to really try and refer back to some kind of blue sky, nice goal that you have for maybe in the long term. And I'm going to go through a very, very well-known coaching model with you now. And I'd like you to be either making notes, because this can actually be helpful, even in this kind of short session, in maybe making you see how feasible that dream goal might be, or at least something to go back to that you can use again when you do have some ideas about something you'd like to do. And I'm referring, of course, to the reliable transformation tool, which is the GROW model. And I suppose GROW, what it kind of stands for, if you like, is goals, reality, options, and will. Now, other versions of goal, you may already know, have different interpretations of each of these, and there are such a myriad of explanations out there. It's almost overwhelming if you were to go on YouTube and just, you know, put GROW in as your search. I'm going to, I suppose, put you through the steps of it the way I like to do it, and ask you the questions that I would in a coaching session where we are looking at a person attempting to make a transformation of some kind in their careers or in their lives. So hopefully maybe you've got something in mind that you can refer this to. And I would even encourage you, if you can, to make notes to some of the questions in answer to those questions. Because by the end of it then, you may just have the beginnings of a plan to actually make this dream goal actually part of a reality, or at least get on to some kind of feasibility with it. So the first section of questions I'm going to ask you about that goal is the actual goal itself. Okay, that's very important, guys, when we do have a goal, that we can actually put that goal into a short sentence, that it is specific enough for us to understand what it is. So it's not a vague goal of one day I'll be fitter and I'll be able to be at the finish line of the New York Marathon or whatever. There's much more specifics we can go to with that. And we can start small, of course, with kind of fitness types goals. And of course, I'm taking a well-hackneyed kind of example there. In these times, we're getting so many reminders of things that we can do to keep our fitness levels up. However, let's get started. So when you have that idea of the goal, what is it I want? As opposed to what I need, what actually, separates itself from my needs, and what is it I want? And that helps us really distinguish that kind of, I suppose, the dream, the blue skies kind of element of the goal. The next question is important. What will it get me? Where will I be? What will it get for me achieving this goal? What might be more important? This is a great way of kind of maybe a reality check, or maybe I suppose a conscientiousness about achieving this goal. What will success look like? And what are the benefits for me? Okay, so you might already have a very strong idea of a goal, and you may already be able to give answers to yourselves on that. But if not, go back, guys, and maybe ask those questions, and discipline and challenge yourselves to put an answer beside each one. And I think you get a better outcome at the end when you've done that. The next is the reality check. How are things going at the moment? Okay, now that is a huge and very broad question. It's wide open, and it's wide open for a reason. And again, in a one-to-one or in a group session around this, with a bit more time, we could really thrash it out. But it's a really important question to ask. In every way, my sense of my own influence in my life, my self-esteem, my success rate, in achieving other goals at the moment. Is it a time to put pressure on myself? Maybe it isn't. So how things are going are very important. How am I feeling at the moment is also very, very important, and really trying to focus in on how many times a day I might feel that kind of sneaky fear at the moment, or uncertainty is impacting upon me, etc. What values are important to me? And is this goal, do my values align with this goal in any way? Even though it may still be in that blue sky territory, is there something about my values that I hold really, really important that might be in a line with that goal? And if so, that's a great thing, because the plan or the steps towards it can make themselves quite clear even at that stage. What's my biggest worry at the moment? Is it connected to the goal, or not, as the case may be? And if so, what kind of level of impact might it have on me achieving that goal? Is my goal indeed to do something to make things better in my life, to eliminate those worries that are in my life? And if so, that's also a very good, conclusion to come to. What resources are available to me to achieve it? If they're not readily available, what can I do about it? It doesn't mean just because they're not there, I can't achieve this goal. What can I do to make those resources there for me? What obstacles might I meet along the way? Are those obstacles external, or are they internal? Are they my own obstacles? And also a very good question at this stage is, how do I manage stress? In recent times, the last 3 or 4 stressful events that happened to me, how did I come out of that? Am I telling myself I'm good at managing stress? Well, what does my actual history, track record say about that recently? Because in there, we can really find, much higher levels of self-awareness and honesty about how we're dealing with stress at the moment. And again, guys, stress is never something we can say is a done thing. I'm someone who handles stress well is not a statement we can ever really make about ourselves. As well, life teaches us that. The harsh lessons sometimes. One stressful event can happen and we can, get through it pretty well. Another can happen and it can topple us all together. So we do have to kind of acknowledge that kind of instability in our own abilities to manage such things as stress. So the recent track record is usually a good indicator of where you are with that. again, disciplining yourselves to come up with real answers to each one of these questions will help you get to some kind of level of concrete plan in achieving this goal. So O is really a very important part of this as well. For example, this first question, in my wildest dreams, how would I achieve this goal? And again, if this is one of those unfeasible kind of ones that you think are impossible, that you'd love to do one day, but maybe not at the moment, then maybe these are the kinds of questions you need to ask. If I had more money, more authority, time, what would be different? And that's a very, very important question here, I think, because these are the things that the little voices that can come in and tell us not to do it. You don't have enough money. You don't have the authority at the moment to take that kind of project on in your workplace and be at the helm of it. Somebody else is going to have to do that. I don't have the time at the moment, you know, again, a hugely, hugely difficult thing for all of us right now. What might be some of the options to achieve this goal? So we're in a place of options. We're in the place where we're allowing that creative part of our brain kind of take over here. So allow it to come, go for the blue sky options, all of the options, get them all down, however feasible or unfeasible they may be. And then we pull out a few of them that might be possible, and we kind of, I suppose, assess them on a level of advantage and disadvantage. We kind of pin them down even further. And then to remind ourselves here, guys, I've added this in from my own experience working with people. We need to remind ourselves here of this idea that perhaps I'm braver than I think. Okay, that maybe none of these options look like I'm really able to do. There's nothing there that I feel is feasible. Well, look at what you've just achieved when you had to in this pandemic. Maybe you are braver than you think. And then finally, the will part is, you know, looking at options, taking down those kind of maybe concretizing things a little bit, pulling down those strings of maybe possible steps that could begin you on the path of achieving the goal. What option is the best choice here, given everything I have answered already? Is it just because it's the safest choice or the most well-worn path? Maybe that's not a good option in that instance. Maybe I should really go back and think through all of the other options there. On a scale of 1 to 10, how committed am I to this? At this point, how do I feel about it? What would it take if I'm 7 out of 10? What would it take? What would I need to change or put in place so that I could get that to my commitment to 10? Or do I actually need to park this for a few months or a little bit of time while I get my things in place so that I am fully and wholly committed? What else do I need to do? Are there other things I need to have in place? Are there people I need to talk to here? Do I need support? Do I need to get a little bit of a network or a team together? When will I get started? And now we're almost into the realm of the SMART goal. When will I get started with this? What accountability structure will help me? Very important here, guys. Is there a key person who I trust, who will be that accountability structure for me, who will check in with me on my progress, who will assess the steps that I'm taking in achieving this goal? What kind of accountability can I put in place for myself as I go through the steps in achieving my goal? And most importantly, of course, is when we do get there, whatever it might be, that you don't just move on to the next thing and you kind of see it all in this kind of blur. It's really important to try and mark the time when that goal was achieved. Now, I know in some goals, they can be kind of vague, and when we achieve them, they don't feel like we're there at all. But really try to discipline yourselves in finding the day that this goal was achieved and remember it. Get those 3 traits that you put into your alarm or onto your calendar or whatever, and remind yourselves of what you have achieved, and celebrate it as in I suppose, a concrete and meaningful way as you can. It doesn't have to always be the big celebration. It can be something simply that you tell yourselves internally that you've done it. and that can be powerful enough. We're coming very close. In fact, we've gone over time, but I pretty much got there, guys. I was going to bring you on to really concretizing that idea of the GROW model into a SMART goal. One thing I'm comforted about by not getting to do that with you today is that SMART goals, again, is something that you can find out there if you're not already using them. They have come into their own, guys, with the whole thing of remote working, helping people to become autonomous achiever of goals. Has really, people have come back to this well-worn and very well-known model of achieving goals. So don't be afraid to go back if you're groaning looking at that model there going, oh no. These really can have really kind of gained in strength in these times that we're living in. So if you don't know them and you're not aware of them, there's many really good explanations out there at the moment. So that's really where we can bring it, I suppose, in this way. But just because you may not have the luxury of a coach with you along the way, we can use a kind of, a very basic self-coaching model, which can bring us back to goal setting, which can bring us back to focus and motivation. So these nice, simple questions I'll leave you with as well. You might find them better as a kind of a starting point, at least, to become proactive in a situation that is difficult, and then to start finding that you might have a goal that you'd like to achieve. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and my apologies for the late start. These are the very things that throw us off, all of us. Just when we think we have a handle on these things, they can throw us completely. So thank you very, very much for listening. I really hope it's helpful, and I'm sure I can be contacted through Sarah and through Sandyford Business District to answer any questions. I'd be more than happy to hear from you, should they come up afterwards.
Okay, thanks Paula. Lonergan, the learning rooms, you were worth the wait.
Thank you.
Really informative. Yeah, and there's a couple of things like I zoned in on around fear, especially with the pandemic. There's certain elements that look, you can't control, they're out of your control. So don't sweat the small stuff. Stop worrying about them. Only, I suppose, focus on items or scenarios that you have control over. As a family, we used to gather around the 6 o'clock news at the start, and we were fixated on the numbers. That was always bad news. So we stopped doing that. So we've, I suppose, learned as we've been able to deal with things.
That's a really nice example.
Yeah. And just, you pick up on goals. I would constantly set goals for myself. Some would be completely unrealistic. Maybe I'm not setting them correctly, but those that I do achieve, I do treat myself, and it's a physical treat, and so it's something that remains, in the house or wherever it may be. So when I see it, it brings me back to I suppose, to the goal. And I would use, I don't know how effective it is, goal visualization.
Yes, absolutely.
So I can visualize myself either being happy or owning something or doing something, and it works for me. I don't know what your take is on goal visualization.
Oh, absolutely, and with more time, I would love to go into that, because it really is. And again, it goes back to the idea of starting with the end in mind. When the more concretely you have that end sketched out for yourself, and the more detail and color you can put into it, the bigger the chances of achieving it, and the less unfeasible it might even feel as well. If you can visualize yourself in a happier place, we can get a lot of courage to make those radical changes we might need to make in our lives, in our health, in anything, in our relationships, in our families, in our work. The courage it takes to change our work or make a change in our lives like that can be so helped by having this vision, a feasible enough vision of ourselves in that new place, and being happy in it, so absolutely, it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, well, I suppose one of the challenges with goals is maintaining, your level of discipline and drive. And I suppose is it a certain personality trait that certain people are find it easier to achieve goals, and other people require more work? And if so, what can people do?
Well, I don't know. I think, we can obviously think of, the achievers out there, the ambitious people out there who seem to be achieving a lot as they go. But no, I don't see goals as being in that, as such, in that place necessarily. So a goal can be, like I said, it can be an intrinsic, long-term goal to do better in certain situations with people in my work or whatever. And these goals can be that sense of mastery over myself, can be the very, hugely beneficial thing that then spurs us on to make other changes in our lives. So no, I think maybe certain personalities might be better disposed to the idea of creating goals, because some of us don't even like that idea. I've plenty of people I'm working with at the moment who, well, even when they hear, oh, create a goal, it kind of like they shut down a little bit. So I think maybe certain personality types might be more open to it. But I don't think after that, achieving goals is impacted upon by personality types, but it can be impacted upon things like our levels of self-esteem, a previous experience of trying to make a change, and those things can. And that's why I think those questions, the GROW model, is very, very helpful there, because it takes that kind of, it goes into that kind of murky place that we may not want to, and makes us address it and see it ever before we take a step towards the goal, so that we have some kind of contingency plan when those things hit and those doubts hit and all of those things that make it more difficult. We've thought this one through, we've addressed it, we've confronted that, and that's great. And I think that's part of the coaching model that is invaluable, really, to achieving goals.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Paula. Yeah, just the last few slides of your presentation. Everyone can view those on our website, sandyford.ie, the entire webinar.
The whole thing, yeah.
Will be on our website, sandyford.ie. So Paula Lonergan, thank you so much. Paula.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And like I said, I genuinely mean it. If anybody has questions, it was quite quick. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to hear from them. So.
Brilliant, yeah, no, because we could, it's a very interesting topic, and I think it's relevant to many people. Just a reminder to everybody that the Learning Rooms are offering 24-hour free access to a number of courses throughout Wellness Week. They are time management, resilience, looking after your mental health, managing stress in the workplace, mindfulness in the workplace. So full details are available on sandyford.ie. Again, thank you so much, Paula Lonergan.
Thank you, everybody.
Enjoyable. As part of our Spend in Sandyford campaign, we have another Me to You €50 voucher. The name has been pulled out of a hat, and the winner is Nullig Flood. So congratulations, Nullig. That's a €50 Me to You voucher. So we'll be in contact with details how to claim. And tomorrow, just a reminder, we have a Wellness Wednesday webinar, and that's Building Resilience and Tackling Everyday Challenges with Dr. Eddie Murphy. And Dr. Eddie Murphy, many of you will probably know him from RT's Operation Transformation. So again, thank you, Paula Lonergan, the Learning Rooms.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for tuning in and listening, and stay safe.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.